And as some of these extreme elements on the right are mainstreamed or normalized, it's very troubling. Then on the left, you absolutely have elements on the left in the US which are also very troubling. Now, whereas the extremists on the right sort of exhibit classic racialist anti-Semitism, the extremists on the left traffic in politically correct anti-Semitism, masquerading it as anti-Israel. But in fact, when you just peel back the veneer, you quickly understand that anti-Zionism is the new anti-Semitism. Now, to be fair, there's nothing wrong with taking issue with particular policies of the Israeli government. I take issue with policies of the American government. I take issues with policy of other governments. It doesn't mean I'm fundamentally opposed to the legitimacy of those governments. But if you look at those who stand up and speak out against Israel in the worst kind of ways, bereft of fact, not grounded in information, they seek to delegitimize the state. They seek to demonize all Israelis. They hold Jews to a double standard. And we see this on our college campuses, where the boycott, divestment, sanctions movements tried to get resolutions passed. A typical one was that happened at a major university in New England a couple weeks ago, where the anti-Israel students scheduled a vote on a BDS resolution on Erev Pesach, knowing the Jewish students wouldn't be there, intentionally doing it when they wouldn't be around. Now, like I can tell you, you wouldn't schedule an anti-Catholic vote on Lent, or like the eve of Good Friday, and you wouldn't schedule something of interest to the Muslim community on the eve of Ramadan. So this is really troubling. And there are folks like Linda Sarsour who on the one hand are raising money for Jewish cemeteries, on the other hand she's pro-anti-normalization.
She published a piece on the New York Times saying you can't be a feminist and be a Zionist.
Right, I mean, so I find this really, really bad.
And as you say, she also contributes to protecting Jewish cemeteries, so it's really a very thin line.
Yeah, but I think the challenge
It's like
becomes,
a facade.
what I'll say is that, like, with the fundraising for the cemetery, and just so you well know, there was a series of bomb threats against the Jewish community. We learned the perpetrator was actually an Israeli, but still over almost 170 Jewish community centers and day schools in my offices got 6 bomb threats. Like, irregardless of who the perpetrator is, the impact, the frightened parents, the terrified children, the shaking elderly people, the impacts are anti-Semitism. And we had a series of desecrations of cemeteries. Now, we've had some desecrations of cemeteries before, but not in line like that. It was like a virus that was moving throughout the community. And so she raised money with other Muslims for it, which is an admirable thing to do that should be applauded. I only wish the St. Louis community had taken half of the money that she raised and put it toward cleaning up the headstones, and taken the other half of the money and put it toward cleaning up the language, right? To demonstrate that delegitimizing Jews is just as bad as destroying Jewish headstones. I care as much about the Jews who are alive as the Jews who are dead. And so I think we should ask for, we should start with ourselves, and we should ask our allies and others to show the kind of respect for one another that we try to show for them. So, I think I understand those who are very focused on what's happening right now in the Trump administration, because it seems as if some extremist elements, Linda Sarsour is on the margins. She may be, and there may be folks in the progressive circles, okay, who are making a lot of noise, but they're not in power. I understand those who are concerned. We're more focused with those who are in power. But we have no choice but to be vigilant in terms of all of it. And at the ADL, we strive not to be political, but to be principled. I don't care how you vote, I care what you value. And so we are not going to stop speaking our truth, regardless of the consequences. Because, look, my job description is very simple. It's protect the Jewish people. What we have found in the US is that when we make America good for the Jews, it's good for all minorities. And when America is good for all minorities, it's also good for the Jews. I think there's that equation, I think, that proof has application in other countries like here. And so We just came from a meeting with Conapred, is that the name?
Yes,
con la
the
pre-
LGBT community.
Yeah, and so, look, I think that we want to do what we can to share what we learned with others to help them in their struggles.
We have like 10 to 15 minutes. And then
I'm gonna call it
yes,
10.
10 minutes.
So we have 10 more minutes. Other questions?
I don't want to push it back to the US, but
It's okay?
the day before James Comey was fired by President Trump, he gave a remarkable speech at
Yeah.
Yale.
Yeah, he did.
What is your reading of the current news regarding Comey
Well,
and the rule of law?
so FBI Director Comey, who did give his last sort of public address at the ADL meeting, you know, the FBI, I think, is an organization, branch of the government, an arm of the government of tremendous integrity. And I think he was a man of integrity. It is the president's prerogative to hire and fire people. And some staff require confirmations by the US Senate, like ambassador positions, or members of the cabinet, and some don't, like the FBI director. So he's entitled to do so. It seems like we're still trying to understand what was the logic, the rationale. It does seem like the process was a bit flawed.
And the timing?
Timing is a bit, so I think there are a lot of unanswered questions. So I would simply say that we have a great deal of respect for the FBI. We had a great working relationship with former Director Comey. I respect the president's right to hire and fire staff, and we're waiting, like everyone else, to have these questions answered to try to better understand what happened and why it happened.
One question. You spoke about that new anti-Semitism is not new anti-Semitism, it's the new anti-Israel. What do you think it has to be the position of every community outside Israel, with Israel and with its government, when there are some cases that break interest between the two countries?
I understand.
And what do you think it has to be the position of Israel with their Jewish communities in the diaspora? It's the two ways.
So this is a very complicated question. Look, I think Prime Minister Netanyahu and the elected government of Israel has a job, which is to protect the citizens and preserve the nation state of Israel. And so those of us in diaspora can be supported and have a relationship with Israel, but ultimately, you know, we aren't the ones responsible for its affairs. With that said, we also need to recognize that Prime Minister Netanyahu and the nation state of Israel, its actions can sometimes have repercussions for communities in the diaspora, like here in Mexico. For example, the tweet that happened in January.
Yes.
We have an office in Jerusalem, and the ADL is in frequent touch with the government, the Israeli government. We try to be as supportive as we can be, and you know, at times we don't agree about an issue, we'll communicate that, sometimes in private and sometimes in public. But I think that it is a delicate balance. How do you show support effectively for the state of Israel,
Yes.
which is under siege in so many ways, which faces radical Islam in the north with ISIS, radical Islam, that would be the northeast. To the north was Hezbollah, to the south with ISIS on that border, and Sinai, to sort of the southwest with Hamas and Gaza. I mean, look, these are very difficult challenges in a very unstable region. At the same time, you know, we hope that they will continue to thrive as a vibrant, pluralistic democracy that respects the rule of law and respects freedom of expression and the rights of all of its citizens, Jewish, Arab, Reform, Conservative, everyone. And that's the case we make with the government.
And the Jewish communities outside Israel, because you talk about Netanyahu and how the position it has to be about the Jewish communities with Israel. But
Look,
Israel
I
is
think-
supported, but
I think part of the reason why the American Jewish community is so confident and strong, and this may have application here, I'm not sure, is because we have a sovereign Jewish state of Israel. I mean, Israel is a miracle. It's a miracle in every way. And this year, 1967, we should celebrate the miracle of its survival facing, you know, extraordinary odds in 1967. That said, from time to time, when the interests of the community in the diaspora and the interests of the nation state of Israel don't necessarily completely align, I think that we need to find respectful ways to deal with that, to communicate that. Sometimes in public, sometimes in private, sometimes formally, sometimes informally. So there's no hard and fast rule. Every case needs to be evaluated on an individual basis in the context of understanding the privilege and miracle that is Israel and the sensitivities vis-a-vis the situation they face.
The last two questions.